I can't figure it out. Are we working with China or are we not working with China?
It remains to be seen, and I think it depends on who you ask and maybe on what day. It does sound like, according to President Trump, that there are some talks going on. We don't know who is talking to who or at what level of the government. But then when you hear from the Ministry of Commerce over in China, it sounds like, no, talks aren't taking place. So I'm not quite, well, I know who I believe, but, for the most part, it's like you're getting these conflicting messages out there.
In most video games, at the end, you have to challenge what's called the boss and beat them. And it seems that China was the boss in all this tariff talk. And there was a bit of relief when we heard that somebody might be talking to somebody.
Yeah.
But we really can't tell. Is that being reflected in earnings? Because earnings season is here. What are we hearing from company officials?
Yeah, so the company officials aren't really taking a position as to what's going to happen with the tariffs. They're drawing out scenarios in terms of if they stay in place or if they go away, if we have a recession, if we don't. And so it's kind of nice to get that type of visibility from them as they go through earnings season here. And just a few things. There's, those who are saying that they're likely going to do well in a high tariff environment. A company like Whirlpool, they came out and they said, hey, 80% of our customers are in the United States. We kind of learned the lesson from the first Trump administration where they tried to move more manufacturing back to the United States. They think that they can gain market share. But then you have other companies where they're likely a lot more exposed. I think a good example of that is you have companies like Pepsi versus Coke, right? And my mother absolutely loves Pepsi, but their secret formula, they make that in Ireland because years ago, they moved it over there because Ireland, they want to be like almost like a tax haven, very low tax environment. And so Pepsi moved all of that over to Ireland. But now with that tariff, that puts them at a slight disadvantage because now it increases the cost of production for them. So there are those who say they're going to do well, those who are going to pay the price.
And they're at about, 10% in Ireland?
Yeah, exactly.
Which sounds pretty good compared to all the other ones that we've heard
compared
about.
to 145% on the Chinese goods, which is effectively an embargo.
So if you remember during COVID, the ports were jammed. They couldn't unload everything. In fact, they were anchored outside. Completely different now.
It really is because of tariffs, especially the traffic between China and the West Coast. That traffic has basically dried up. It took a while, of course, because they leave China and then it takes a while to get over to the United States. And the way that the tariffs were imposed, it was that if they left China by a certain deadline, that it wouldn't be subject to tariffs. Well, that deadline has come and gone, and as a result, there's basically very little activity leaving ports of China destined for the United States because of these.
It sounds like the president is listening more to American business. And what was this meeting between he and the heads of some heavy hitters?
Oh, yeah. You had President Trump meeting with the CEOs of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot. And keep in mind that they do have a vested interest in trying to say that they don't want these tariffs because they don't want their costs to go up. And they don't know the extent to which they'll be able to pass on their cost increases to final consumers. But they were giving some warnings about how consumers will eventually pay the price, either in terms of the actual literal price or in terms of the availability of the different goods. Now, some of the headlines were talking about warnings how there might be empty shelves. And I think that maybe it would be more along the lines of just less availability because I'm sure they will fill the shelves with something else.
In our final 45 seconds, let's talk about the highly exciting Beige Book.
The Beige Book, so a collection of anecdotes from around the United States published by the Federal Reserve before their policy meetings. It was giving a warning sign about a possible slowdown. It effectively said that growth, since the last time that they published this, which was just about a month ago, that growth had effectively come to a standstill. And the word uncertainty popped up in there more than 80 times, which is a record. And everybody's worried about tariffs. So it's almost like businesses are thinking, let's just sit on our hands and wait to see how things shake out, because things can change from one day to the next. You never really know. So they say, why commit to making big capital investment plans or expanding hiring when you can just wait a couple weeks and get a little bit more clarity?